5 months into World War I, both sides were in trenches. They were just mass slaughter across the landscape. Men were standing up, sleeping. They were in their own feces. And their dead comrades were sitting there in no man's land. They couldn't even get them and bring them back for burial. It was Christmas Eve, and the German high command had sent little Christmas trees. It was like a stage set. All of a sudden, across the German front, you saw these little Christmas trees lighting up. And then the Allies heard Silent Night being sung by the Germans and started applauding. And then all of a sudden, a couple of guys on both sides get out of the trenches and start walking toward each other.
And expecting any moment to fall flat with the machine guns opening up, and nothing happened. And within 2 hours, we were walking about and laughing and talking, and there was nothing from the German lines.
Hundreds get out of the trenches, then thousands get out of the trenches, and they embraced each other, 100,000 men.
Whole no man's land, as far as we could see, was grey and khaki. There they were smoking and talking, shaking hands, exchanging names and addresses after the war to write to one another.
Everybody back in your trenches, you know, and shouting. The generals behind must have seen it and got a bit suspicious. So what they did, they gave orders for a battery of guns behind us to fire. And officers fired their revolvers at the Jerrys, you know. Of course, that started the war again. Oh, we were cursing them to hell.
This was the war to end all wars. This was the war to make the world safe for democracy. At least 21,000 new millionaires were made in the U.S. Billions and billions of dollars would be piled up by a few. Munition makers, shipbuilders, meat packers. And let us not forget the bankers who financed the Great War, who turned blood into gold. And their profits were as secret as they were immense. All of them are looking ahead to war.
I stand before you tonight in my red star chiffon evening gown. My face softly made up and my fair hair gently waved. The Iron Lady of the Western world.
The Al-Yamamah deal was this extraordinary deal between the United Kingdom and Saudi Arabia, in which Ronald Reagan wanted to sell the Saudis billions and billions dollars worth of equipment. But the Israeli lobby stopped it, and Congress wouldn't approve it because they feared arming Saudi would threaten Israel. So Ronald Reagan handed the deal over effectively to his political soulmate, Margaret Thatcher.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
You are a very tough act to follow.
When we stumbled on the Saudi arms deal, the Al-Yamamah arms deal, we really started to stumble on a central feature of British politics over the last 30 years.
His Royal Highness Prince Bandar has been at the heart of many of the great world events of the past 30 years. I was always pleased to see him when I was Prime Minister because he brought me extraordinary insights and bold proposals.
She informed us she considers Saudi Arabia as a strong friend and will be willing to support the kingdom with whatever the kingdom needs. End of discussion. From there on, everything else was technical.
He explained to Mrs. Thatcher that this was a deal with Saudi Arabia and therefore things were done differently. They wanted £43 billion worth of weaponry. That was £6 billion in commissions. The vast majority are what most people understand as bribes.
We continue to work together against the terrorists who threaten the way of life of our citizens.
One day my phone rang, and it was a man called Eddie Cunningham, actually. He said, I've been working for a travel company, and we had a kind of slush fund we used to distribute to Saudis and other Arabs when they came to Britain for BAE, all to help the Path of Arms deals along. And he told these extraordinary stories that when Saudi military officers would come along, he would present them with canteens of cutlery. That was something that they liked. Another thing they liked was girls. So he would take them out in the town and get them girls.
To be honest, it seemed like quite small beer. Payments made, some of them for rather un-Islamic activities. Gaming chips, there were talks about call girls, that sort of thing.
There's only two things that count in business, my friend. Money and sex. The rest, you can write as much as you like, is absolute garbage. You can make a weapon beautiful, depends on your secretary. Because they're more distracted looking at your secretary's ass and thinking what the hell you're talking about. And that is sometimes all the edge you need. I had to use an escort agency called Blue Orchids because of the special taste of the Chief of Staff of the Army, who liked blonde with silicone. We had their secretary of the embassy come and review the photos, and he said, I want this one, I want this one, I want this one, I want this one. I had the girls arrive one day before, and I said, girls, I know you've all been paid handsomely for this, but do me a favor, if you get any pillow talk that is relevant, please bring it across, because I could use it. And for each interesting information, I will give another 2,000 euro bonus. So with 60 grand, I signed a contract worth 3 million. So it wasn't a bad deal.
And then my phone rang again. And it was another whistleblower, and he said, you have no idea what it is that you're getting into here. And he said, this slush fund is much, much bigger than you realize. Our job was to look after the really high-level people. Those who used to come to England who were being bribed, essentially, by BAE, were people on the level of the head of the Saudi Air Force, who was a royal prince. We would fly them to Los Angeles, and they would buy cars and dresses. It wasn't shopping like you and I would think. In the end, when they gathered together all their shopping, we would charter an entire jumbo jet to fly it all back to Saudi Arabia.
It was in the attempt to try and trace through the bank accounts who the ultimate beneficiaries are that the case became really very serious, as the trail appeared to lead towards senior members of the Saudi royal family.
The most outrageous example was that BAE, in order to smooth the way with Prince Bandar, at one point made him a present of a huge commercial airliner, all of his very own, which he promptly had painted in the grey and silver colours of the Dallas Cowboys, who were his favourite American team. And he used to fly around in that quite cheerfully.
The case centred on establishing the ultimate beneficiaries of exceptionally large amounts of money paid by British Aerospace for consultancy services.
There's evidence that Mark Thatcher, Mrs. Thatcher's son, got 12 million in cash for his work as a fixer.
This is a Star 9mm. That's okay, it's not loaded. Don't worry. It's a very beautiful weapon, it's Austrian made. If you want to sell on the market, and you're looking probably at about 3,500 euros.
And why do you keep it in the house?
Because I'm a soldier.
And you can do that legally?
Yes and no, but yeah, more or less you can, as long as it's in the house. And you don't shoot the cat of the neighbor. I've got nothing against money. I don't mind paying bribes to politicians. It's part of the deal. The thing about politicians is that they're very much like prostitutes, but only more expensive. The politics is dictated by the whims of the arms industry. Politicians are nothing more than sales reps, my dear friend. They have as much power as a middle-ranking executive in Lockheed Martin. At the end of the day, they do what they're told.
When an executive goes to bribe a foreign official, he says to himself, look, I've taken a lot of risk to take this $5 million that I'm paying to the Prime Minister of XYZ. He makes an arrangement with Prime Minister of XYZ. I'll hand over the $5 million, but you take half of that $5 million and you send it to the following bank account in Switzerland. We'll share in this largesse. The first time an executive does that and he collects $2.5 million, he says, wow, this is a good business to be in. And within moments of that realization, he is now no longer in the business of selling airplanes. He's in the business of selling bribes. And he is now scouring the world for somebody to find to bribe.
Regrets. I've had a few. But then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do and saw it through without exemption. I planned each charted course, each careful step along the byway, and more, much more than this. I did it my way.
And then the phone rang again. And this was somebody who said, you have no idea what you're getting into. He said, this whole BAE thing is much, much bigger, goes right to the very top. What he had was something that you never see as a journalist, Swiss bank records of international covert payments going all over the world. He showed me how BAE had set up a whole system with Lloyds Bank under which they channeled secret payments into a British Virgin Islands offshore company called Red Diamond. And from Red Diamond, the money went into this guy's Swiss bank account, and he then used it to distribute to the local politicians, taking a big chunk for himself, of course.
I mean, I can certainly assure you, that we, and I believe most companies, are not in the business of making payments, passing, as you suggest, large sums of money to employees of governments. It is just not the way business is done.
We were actually able to publish what was our most dangerous story, that Prince Bandar had been given not just a plane, but over the years, a total of £1 billion.
We did not invent corruption. Adam and Eve were in heaven, and they had hanky-panky, and they had to go down to earth. So, this is human nature.
I salute a prince, a statesman, and a friend.
What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests.
All those people who believe that greed, violence, etc., these primal, so-called primal instincts are the real instincts and everything else is a social construction, they've lost their mind. And for the last 50 years at least, policy has been made based on the assumption of greed. And it's ruined the world.
I wonder if I should read this right of Mr. Reagan.
Thatcherites believe there is no nature of society, so you have to nurture individualism. I don't accept that at all. I think there are very many good public policy initiatives for creating society. Welcome to Beirut. They are saying hello to you. There's a combination AK-47 Kalashnikov. A society that decides that the bulk of its budget is going to go to arms manufacturing, building up a military, etc., they have made a moral decision that militarism is more important than the creation of well-being for the population.
All right.
It's not the world I want to live in. I want to live in the real world. And the real world is peopled by real emotions, including love and generosity.
My God, if you want, is freedom. the freedom of human beings, of individuals, to pursue their own values.
I think what the term freedom means is economic license. And the economic license of those who control property and those who control capital has, in fact, been a threat not only to equality, but a threat to the freedom of peoples all over the world, and not only in Europe and in the United States, but in Africa, in Asia, and in Latin America.
I want you to name me any society in which you've had any large measure of that freedom, where capitalism and free enterprise has not been the predominant mechanism.
The free enterprise system has spread through the force of arms, and those arms were wielded by governments. That was government intervention under the name of the free enterprise system, but a government intervention which destroyed the freedoms of many people, not least of which are the people of Chile.
From the 1950s all the way through the 1970s, the CIA and the US military were engaged in covert actions throughout Central and Latin America, throughout Africa, really throughout the world, where they were assassinating populist leaders, they were backing up right-wing military juntas, funding and arming death squads like the Contras in Nicaragua or Battalion 316 in Honduras, and there were these spate of assassinations across the globe.
In countries like mine, people have been killed to be quiet. To know that any day, any time, you're going to be killed, you don't know how, but it's coming. We were fighting an oligarch, and still we are fighting, oligarchs. Minds that don't want to work on inclusiveness, but just extraction. It's not only about taking from the earth, but taking from the people. Even your dreams get colonized.
The last half of what is called the Cold War turned out to be a very hot war for many parts of the world. From the standpoint of what Iqbal Ahmed calls the victims, or what I will think of really as of people trying to make their own futures, there was an attempt in the Global South to create an alternative imagination for people. But in the early 1970s, this attempt was destroyed. And it was stopped through a real, genuine attempt by the Global North to take over the institutions of the world, including the World Bank, the IMF. So it's not simply that the people of the South were incapable of carrying forward their dreams. I use a very strong word. These dreams were assassinated. It's not just the one-off killings, the coup here, the coup there. It's the entire dream that had to be killed.
Los suplicios, las torturas servían poco o nada para arrancar información, pero eran muy útiles para sembrar el miedo. Y el miedo obligó a los uruguayos a vivir callando o mintiendo. En el exilio yo recibí unas cuantas cartas anónimas desde mi país. Una de esas cartas decía: es jodido mentir y es jodido acostumbrarse a mentir. Pero peor que mentir es enseñar a mentir. Y yo tengo 3 hijos.
The joint hearings of the House Select Committee to investigate covert arms transaction with Iran and the Select Committee on secret military assistance to Iran and the Nicaraguan opposition will come to order.
You just smack them. You use your military and you smack them.